some wine. I told him I was trying to encourage you to have a drink.
Oh, we are live after
Yay!
what seemed like hours of technical difficulties. Oh my gosh, because
less than 20 minutes. We're good. It's 12:47.
Yeah, and I usually start. I start preparing the live show, getting everything running a half an hour before, and they wouldn't recommend a problem with my encoder anyway. So we're using Google Hangouts on air, and I hope everyone made it over. Please tell your friends and share it on your social media, because I kind of got a little, when you have to change locations, you do sacrifice a lot of your audience. They can't find where you are. So I do appreciate everyone that is still sticking around with us, and we're going to jump right into the tutorial. I am using Cotman watercolors, which are a student grade watercolor. I'm doing this painting from that I sketched on my vacation using a waterproof pen. In case you want to find any of these products, they're all linked up to Jerry's Artorama. They're our sponsor today, and they've got a great price. They actually have this set of Cotmans, the American set, which includes genuine cadmiums and cobalt. And I double-checked on their website, and they're still listing this, and it's on sale for $55 if you want to get this exact set. So we're going to start by sketching. And generally, when I'm sketching a scene like this, I'm going to go with my most dominant object, and I think I started with that rock there. And if you want to sketch with a pencil, you can. I like to just go right in with a pen, especially if I'm out sketching in the world, because I find that I hesitate less, and I just kind of get right to it. Get these rocks in here.
And just a quick reminder, questions, please type them in all caps. It makes it easier for me to get to your questions.
Oh, yes. Good reminder. You do have to plan a little bit as you're sketching to make sure that you kind of sketch what's closest to you, then go to what's furthest away from you. Like this plant, I can't finish drawing that rock until I draw this plant in here, which is just a bunch of loopy, scribbly lines, basically just putting in the leaves. And I'm going to try to mellow out and relax a little bit because I was a little stressed. To put it mildly.
It's okay. We did it, though. We did it. Deborah Aceta, this might be off topic, but what kind of glue gun do you recommend?
I recommend a Surebonder. I've had more luck with Surebonder glue guns than any other brand, and I do go through the glue guns. So a Surebonder will last me a couple years, and I use them every day. So that's what I would go with. And I would go with the dual temperature one, so you can have hot or low glue sticks depending on what you're trying to glue. Sometimes things will want to melt. Now I can continue this line on that rock because I've gotten that plant sketched in there. And I can put this rock that's in behind here, part of it, because then I'm going to come down with the edge of this really big boulder there. And there's another little rock kind of tucked underneath it. I just loved I love the look of the moss kind of growing over the rocks. And that's what I was trying to capture here. This is a view from the dock from where the camp that we rented. Got some more little foliage here. You do not have to be very picky or specific with your sketching.
It's nature, baby. Let it be wild.
That's right. It's very wild. How many people have made it over to this?
We got 230 watching, so I think we got it. We got most of the people.
Oh my goodness, that was like, I feel like I'm like trying to land a space shuttle sometimes here, because I'm like, I got 5 computers and a cell phone and
kids, and then I come over with the dog, and it's just chaos. It's just chaos.
It's good chaos though. Although I'm thinking I'm really, because now we're using Google Hangouts, which is what I used to always use, that I called simple mode, and I used to be like, why would we ever bother with an encoder? But then I wanted the higher quality, and I paid for the more expensive, faster internet, so I thought like I was kind of like wasting if not I wasn't using the encoder. But boy, I'll have to look back at this because it looks pretty clear, crisp on my end. If it looks just as good as the encoder stuff, I'm going back to Google Hangouts.
It's the first time we've had technical difficulties in a while, and it's probably something very simple. You'll figure it out later when you've had a chance to relax a little bit. Not under the gun.
Very stressed out. I need another vacation.
Dee's channel. Lindsay, do you use a viewfinder?
I usually don't. Sometimes I will just kind of put my hands kind of together like that to kind of block off an area that I'm looking at if I'm having a hard time deciding what I want to do. But nothing like fancy or, you know, store-bought or anything. This was a tree that was kind of just growing and leaning out over the water. So I'm just kind of sketching that in. And then there was like a kind of a stump here that was growing on top of it. There's actually a couple stumps, but I think putting all three of those in is a little much. I think I'm just going to put one in. Then I can put some ferns growing off of them. Really, really sketchy here, guys. Don't try to make it fussy. When you're out there painting in nature, or you're urban sketching or doing any of that, so I'm going to throw a couple rocks instead of that other stump. You really have to edit and decide and be very deliberate with what you do. All right, I think that's all I really need here for details. And I'm going to cap up my Sharpie so it doesn't dry out, and we're going to start painting. And the brush I'm using, this is the one I took on vacation. It's the Zen 1/2" filbert. So it's kind of like a flat brush where like the ferrule is squashed, but it comes to a point like a round brush. So you've got all the benefits of having a nice wide flat wash brush with the benefit of having a detailed tip, and you can do a lot with that. And I'm going to start by I think I'm going to start by wetting this area up here and getting this kind of dirt, ground, mossy area in. So I'm just wetting this area. And I'm trying to go around the big leaves in this plant. I'm not going to be too fussy with it. And I'm going to stop right above that rock. And I'm going in with burnt sienna. The only thing to keep in mind when you're using a brush like this, or if you're using the Mimic synthetic natural hair brushes or any other sable brush, is that it's softer and more thirsty, so it's going to hold a lot of water. So you may have a difficult time getting your color as intense as you want, especially if you're using a student grade paint like these Cotmans are. So sometimes, now I got plenty of color there, but if I was having a hard time, I could take like an acrylic painting brush that's got bristles that are a little stiffer, and I could go in there and get a much thicker paint. So that's something you could do. You could always cut off an old acrylic brush to keep in your travel kit for that reason. And if you have any questions, like Sarah mentioned, just type them in caps and she can ask as we're going along. That way, if you have any, if you get stuck anywhere, if you are painting along or just something you've been meaning to ask me, you can go ahead and do that.
1991 Shuby. Hey, Lindsay, have you ever tried the pouring technique with watercolors?
I have. I pretty much do that if I'm working on a really large scale, and I haven't done any really large scale work in a while. But the Dr. Peach Martin liquid, like the hydrous inks, are really good for that. I'm sorry, they're watercolors, not inks, and they're light fast. So that's a really great product to use with that if you are interested. Now to make a shadow, I'm going to grab a little ultramarine. And the ultramarine's going to mix with the burnt sienna and gray it, but I still had that sap green on my brush, so it's still staying kind of greeny, which is all right.
Jashnur Darwal, what watercolor palette do you recommend?
For an empty palette, I really like a John Pike palette. You can find those at Jerry's. My Turner watercolors are in a Zoltan Zabo palette, which I definitely like the John Pike palette, and it's not that much more expensive, so I think I would recommend that. It's really, really sturdy. Now I've just taken that mix, so I pretty much have sap green, ultramarine, and burnt sienna, and I'm just bringing it through here, filling in this area, making it kind of like a just a shadowy, earthy conglomeration here. And I'm negative painting. I'm painting around the objects that I sketched in with the pen. And you could do this later if you'd rather paint your bright leaves first. I like to get those shadows in right off the bat, but that's just me. It's completely personal preference. I didn't want to have any hard edge between where I went from doing this moss and dirt over here to getting into the shadows over here. So that's why I'm going ahead and doing it right now.
Barbara Nuth. Do you recommend a private teacher if you are new to watercolor art?
That's a personal preference. Some people are much more comfortable learning with a private tutor. Some people are more comfortable just learning on their own with like videos and books. And some people really get fired up when they're in a class of beginners. I think you have to look at your personality. Everybody's a little different. Now, I didn't mean to get on that tree, so I'm just going to blot that right there with a dry paper towel. And I can lift that up since it doesn't want to come up very easily. Just take that acrylic brush I mentioned before, gently scrub, and then blot. Never rub. Okay, so now that background is kind of in there, and we'll let that dry, and then I'm going to come down here and put in the first layer of the water, because we're going to be doing the water with glazes. And I'm going to start with some ultramarine blue. We're actually going to be using some Viridian here, which is like almost a synthetic looking green. You see, it's very tealy looking. We're just going to go in and throw in a wash under these rocks. You have any other questions?
Well, yes, I'm getting caught up. Dominique Designs, how was your vacation?
Oh, it was wonderful. I didn't realize how badly I needed a vacation until I was
until you were there.
Yeah, because usually I'm going to have a slow period between January and March, and this year I was getting ready for that craftsy class, so I had no slow period at all this year, and it was I didn't realize how much I needed a vacation. I didn't realize how right out straight I'd been.
Sakthi Sangha. Hi, I'm David from Singapore. Big fan. Are Kuretake, Gansai, Tambi watercolors good?
Well, they're pigmented. They're quite highly pigmented. They're more opaque than like these Cotmans or other artist quality watercolors, which is typical for Japanese colors. It's just dependent. They're decent. I don't know how light fast they are, but they're definitely fine to paint with. I'm going to blast this with my dryer for a second too, so I can go on to the rocks, because I know everybody's excited about the rock texture.
Alexine Nicole Tapaya is looking for recommendations on how to draw 3D. Having a hard time sketching 3D.
Okay. When you're trying to draw things that are three-dimensional, usually where you're going wrong is with shading. So I would recommend setting up some objects on your table and putting a lamp next to it so that you can kind of light it from one side. And then I would just draw it in pencil, and I would shade it with pencil and then or charcoal. And then once you get an idea for how light effects form and you can render that in pencil, then try rendering it in your paint. It's usually a shading problem when you're having a hard time getting a 3D look. I'm going to start with this rock here, and I'm going to wet it. And I'm just going to be careful not to go over the plants. But again, this is a sketch, so don't feel like it has to be something that's going to hang in a museum. I want a uniform sheen, so I just wiped off my brush to take off the excess water. And now I'm going to mix a gray by using burnt sienna and ultramarine.
Viona Narkuli, do you recommend watercolor already sold in the pans or to buy a palette and watercolor in tubes?
It depends on what you want. It's neither is better or worse. Now I'm taking that color, and ultramarine blue is a granular color, so it does impart some texture. So when I add this here onto this wet surface, as it dries, it's going to give some really cool texture. And I think I want it a little bit darker at the bottom, so I'm trying to not add any water and just pick up the pigment on my brush and add that down here, because where the water would be splashing on the rocks, it's going to be a little bit darker. And also behind these little plants, there could be some shadow, so I want that darker pigment there. And also behind that rock there, I want that darker color. Now I can pick up some of the burnt sienna kind of on its own with the dirty brush and dab that in. And I can even add some yellow ochre to this, because that's also a nice earthy pigment that tends to be a little heavier and granular. And I can add some of that up there to the top, give it a little highlight. Gosh, it sounds like there's more than 3 children upstairs, doesn't it?
It does. Up there
what the heck's going on upstairs? And then while I have this color on my brush, I'm just going to go ahead and paint in a couple of these rocks that aren't as interesting. And as it dries, some will have more texture depending on how much water was in the paint. The more water that's in your wash, the more granulation you're going to get. I'll put a little bit more of that gray in there. And I can just kind of check a few of these little rocks off by doing this. Can even pick up some of this mossy color that I was using and add that into some of the rocks, because they do get a little mossy coat on them sometimes.
Leba Harmeed, how long does it usually take to complete a watercolor drawing?
Boy, it totally depends on what you're sketching. A lot of the sketches I do out in nature are very quick, like 10 or 20 minutes, and then there are ones that take much longer. I have a video coming up on the birch tree that I did, and I'm actually teaching this in my beginner watercolor class, and this is the one I did on location, and I didn't have a hairdryer, pardon me. I didn't have a hairdryer, so I had to kind of be patient and leave it and come back and leave it and come back. So I ended up spending a lot more time painting this. So I've got more detail, more crisp lines. It's fresher looking. This one, I kind of was impatient. And I was drying in between layers because I was doing a video, and it's much duller. So this is 20 minutes versus probably 40 minutes. So, you know, it just depends on what you're sketching and how much time you have to sketch. So there's no you know, appropriate time, how long it should take or not. It's just however long you take on it. This one up here is going to be a cooler, grayer rock. So I'm going to start by wetting it with a kind of a dirty brush. I'm not going to clean my brush off too well for this. And then we're going to drop in those same pigments, except heavier on the blue, so it's a little bit cooler in color.
Beverly Mossman, so happy to have you back. Missed you.
Oh, I'm glad you can make it, Beverly. You're a regular. I love seeing the regulars.
Amy Colligan, are the Zen brushes by Silver Brush Company?
No, they're by Royal and Langnickel. They're about $3 to $5 a piece, I think, at your big box stores. Jerry's does not carry that line, but I did pick this up at Michael's. I think I paid like definitely under $5. I'm thinking they were $3.99. I probably used a coupon. I don't know. Probably paid less than that. I didn't buy much at Michael's when I went there for the stamp show this year.
Simply Rock Lopez, to learn practice drawing, is it easier to mimic other paintings drawings or just look outdoors?
I think if you look at actual things, whether it be outside or you set up a still life, you'll learn quicker because you can actually pick up the object or look at it closely, examine it. You just have more information to go by, so your paintings will probably be a little bit more accurate. Like if you could feel the texture of a rock, it's going to be easier to paint it than if you're just looking at the picture of it and seeing the visual texture.
Ian Jackson, would you consider this to be a pen and wash paint with it not interacting with the paint?
I would call this a pen and ink and watercolor.
Hello, Chewy. What
I'm going to do here is, because you have to be creative when you're out in the field and you have limited supplies. So what I'm going to do is load up this brush, but I'm going to dry off the ends of the bristles, and then I'm going to splay them apart like this, okay? So then I can kind of dry brush some texture onto that that tree that's hanging over. This isn't going to hurt the brush at all to do this. I just want to get some texture in there. And you got to be really creative when you're out working without a ton of supplies.
Well, on that note, Kate C., what are your tips for on the field painting?
My tips would be pack light. I have a couple of videos where I have like travel options for supplies to bring, but really what you need is a small watercolor set, a little pad or block of watercolor paper, and a water brush. That way you don't have to worry about finding water or using up your drinking water just to paint with. That would be my advice. I'm gonna let that dry. I'm gonna probably put a wash over it later to cool it down in temperature, but I'm gonna let that dry so I keep the texture. And I'm gonna go over here, and this rock is gonna be a little bit more brown. So I've got the same burnt sienna and ultramarine mix, but a little heavier on the brown, making it a warmer color. And I'm gonna go in and paint it dry. That way I can control getting around those little plants a little easier.
JLT 110. What's the difference between embossing ink and a resist ink?
You can use a resist ink to emboss with, but not all embossing inks will work as a resist. It's just they're chemically just slightly different. I think the resisting must have like a stronger oil in it or something rather than just the glycerin that's in a embossing ink. Because I've tried doing the resist technique with just glycerin and it hasn't worked very well. And since that's puddly, I'm going to get a lot of good granulation there. And now I'm going to skip down to this rock, and this rock has a few different shades in it, so I'm just going to kind of clean my brush off. And I've got this kind of like taupey gray color. Then I'm going to pick up some of the green mix that I had left over. That was the sap green with the browns. Maybe a little more sap in there. That's way too bright, so I got to knock that down a bit. And I'm not contaminating my paint too much because I make sure that I don't have too much water on my brush when I go in to pick it up. It's just taking up that top layer. And if you do get your paint layers, your paint's contaminated, you can spray it with water and just wipe it over with a damp brush to clean it. So it's not a huge deal. I try to teach like beginner children to clean rinse their brush before they dip back in, but as an adult, I think you can keep it pretty clean just by being aware of that. Getting a little yellow ochre to warm it.
Kathleen Townsend would like to know if there will be a traceable for this painting.
No, not for this one because we sketched together. So you can go back to the beginning of the video, and because the replay will be available, and you can sketch that. You can just follow along. It's really simple. Or you could always print off the picture and well, it might not be shot straight on. You'll have to look at it. If it's shot straight on, you can just print off the picture and trace it. Now, sometimes I'll leave part of the rock undone because I want a contrasting color. So I'm going in with a little bit more burnt sienna mixed in with some of that gray that I already made. I'm just going to tap that in there. And remember, more water equals more granulation. Not all colors will granulate, but a lot of your earth tones in ultramarine blue do.
Marie Hansen. Hi, Lindsay. Have you ever made watercolor board?
Do you mean like gluing watercolor paper to foam core?
Shouldn't say that's just,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I've made like boards to take my watercolor paper to. A little ultramarine blue. Anytime I want a darker gray, I'm taking more ultramarine blue. And you can leave a highlight area undone and go back in later and add your highlights to it.
Rhonda Bergeron, where did you get your heat tool?
Scrapbook.com. It's probably not the best price. My husband actually got it for me there as a Christmas present because my other one had died after many years of loyal service. But it's a Marvi Uchida brand, so you can kind of search that. You could find them anywhere. I think they're going to probably be $20 to $25.
Probably get on Amazon. Jerry's might even have them.
I don't know if Jerry's has them. He doesn't have too many crafty
Gotcha.
supplies.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Stuff, a place like that.
Yep. I'm gonna do this one now. And this one had some kind of moss growing on it, so that's why I have that kind of. It's hard to see the green on camera. Maybe if I bring it up a little closer, there's some green in there. I went a little heavy on the blue, so I'm not going to do that this time. But I want granulation, so I'm going to pre-wet this. And I'm going to clean up my edges while I'm at it, so I can just kind of wiggle my brush along the edge. Sorry if it's pretty crazy with the background noise here. The furnace is on for some crazy reason, and so is the water pump. So
maybe they're doing the dishes.
Yeah. I'm sure. All right, take some. I'm grabbing the color pretty strongly from the palette, but I'm actually tapping it off into some of my murk that I've made on my palette, and I'm dabbing it in. I rarely will go like that and then go like that because see, you get a really hard edge. Sometimes I want that, but often I end up with more pigment where I don't want it. So, so I like to mix it out. Scrape off the extra pigment and go in with my ultramarine. And that just kind of helps me keep my colors a little bit more harmonious and a little less garish. And let's see, I think I will rinse that color off so I can go in and bring in some green. That moss on the rock. And the nice thing about a big floppy brush is that when you're doing nature, you can kind of turn it and just lay it down. It'll pick up some color, it'll deposit some color, but it really gives you a natural effect, especially if you have a hard time being loose when you paint. Yeah.
Loretta Bear, are liquid watercolors any good?
Yes, and I do have a set of the Dr. Paige Martin. I just use the Radiance for fabric dyeing because that is actually a dye that you can use for dual purpose, but it's not light fast. I also have the Hydrus, which I have done a project with, but I really need to use some more so I can do a comprehensive review, because that's a really nice product. It uses the same pigments as your artist's grade watercolors that you get from a tube or a pan, but you could pour it. They're super concentrated. They're great for large scale works, and they're really nice. I just need to get, they're definitely as good of quality as your traditional watercolors, but I just haven't had a chance to work that tutorial up yet.
Rosemarie Carlson, is artists' watercolor paper pads any good? I don't know if she means like the Artist Loft, like the Michaels brand.
I don't know. I've never used Artist Loft, but I've heard bad things about them, about their paints. I don't know about their paper. I did link to my favorite cheap paper that I'm using today in the video description. It is the Fabriano Studio. A lot of times I'll use the Fabriano Artistico for like our live streams if I'm going to be spending a lot of time with it, but I made all these blocks to take on vacation, and I didn't want to use really expensive paper, and I didn't want to risk losing expensive paint, so I used my Cotman paints, and I made blocks out of Fabriano Studio, and they do have some cotton content, and I find that like that's the cheapest you can get and still get a decent paper. And I did link to that. You can get this. I cut this. I got 3 sheets out of an 11 by 14 piece of paper. So this would be 2, and then I'd have 1 more. So I'd get 3 sheets out of that. And you get a 50 sheet pad for $21.50, I think, somewhere around there. So you get a lot of it paper, and you get more paper if you get a lighter weight. That's the 140-pound weight. But I'm really happy with that. I find it's a good bang for your buck. So when I want to get darker colors, I just kind of squeeze the brush, get the extra pigment out of there. I get the extra water out of there, and then I can pick up stronger pigment from my palette. Your bristles, though, your brush isn't going to want to point. When you do that, it's going to kind of flop around. So we're going to be switching to a smaller brush fairly soon here.
Charlene Craig, just wanted to say hi from Bar Harbor.
Oh, hi. I bet it's busy down there.
Oh, yes.
But you got some traffic.
I bet they do. Gracie Shack, what brand of paper do you recommend for people to buy for pastels?
I like Canson Me Tints for pastels. And it comes in any color you can imagine, or pads that have a variety of like neutral tones. And this rock I want to be a little bit softer and warmer, so I'm going to do a little yellow ochre and burnt sienna in my muddy mix here.
Donna Levitt, I don't understand how sketching in ink doesn't ruin the picture.
This is a Sharpie, so it's waterproof. It's not going to bleed. If you were to use like a watercolor marker, like a Tombow or something like that, it would bleed. It wouldn't necessarily ruin the picture. It might look kind of awesome, but as long as you use any waterproof marker like a Pitt pen or a Sharpie or a Micron, you're going to be all right. I'm just getting a darker color here for the bottom where it's near the water. And now I think I'm going to go to a smaller brush, and since I did use this brush, I'm going to use this brush here. It's a water brush. They take a little getting used to if you're not familiar with using water brushes, because they can feed water out while you're going along. So you may be painting and your paint gets lighter as you go along because it keeps adding water to the mix. This is a Niji. I also like the Koi and the Prima. I used to really like the Caran d'Ache one, but I have a brush that's a Caran d'Ache. It's not that old, and I find that it doesn't seem to feed the water anymore very well, so I don't know what's up with that. And it's more expensive, the Caran d'Ache ones.
EMG Crafter, hello Lindsay. Do you think using a heat tool changes the color of the paint versus air drying?
No, I don't think it does.
Gracie Shack, do you prefer watercolor paper to canvases?
Yes, paper. I don't care for watercolor canvas. But that's just me. You can use whatever you want. I'm going to take some of that Viridian because I used it in the water already. I'm going to add it to some, I feel like I'm going to need another yellow in here. Let me first add it with the yellow ochre and see what we get. Viridian and yellow ochre. That's pretty. Maybe I'll just do that. I don't like to add too many additional colors. And if I have any hard lines, I don't really have to worry about it because I can just scrub it a little bit. Because these are nylon bristles, they're fairly resilient. Just to remember, if you're using the same paper I'm using, this is not a very durable paper. You can't do a ton of scrubbing without it getting, without it shredding the paper a little bit.
Jashnur Dariwal, I have trouble painting what I see. Do you have any tips to help with that?
Yes, I do. Get a piece of glass to plexiglass. If you're using glass, tape the edges up. Sit down somewhere, hold it up in front of you, and draw on it with a dry erase marker. And then you'll be able to see, you'll be able to draw what you see because you'll be tracing it through the window. Or just go in front of a window with a dry erase marker and sketch, and then just wipe it away when you're done. That will make you draw what you really see, not what you think you see.
We have two people, Jess Elena and Dominique Designs. They want to know what's the biggest watercolor painting you've done.
22 by 30 inches. I used to work in that size a lot before I had kids.
When you had time?
When I had more free time. More idle hours to spend on large watercolors, and they could be left out without fear of embellishing by small children.
Small children. Kathleen Townsend, have you ever painted on watercolor canvas board? If so, did you get a good result?
No, I've used watercolor canvas, and it's okay. I think I only have one tutorial on my channel using watercolor canvas. It's a angel wing begonia. I personally just don't like the watercolor canvas. It doesn't absorb your paint. I mean, the primer kind of absorbs your paint, but I would honestly recommend getting a product like watercolor ground or absorbent ground, and that way you can paint whatever you want. You can paint masonite, hardboard, wood, tin, anything, and you can watercolor on it. I just personally didn't like using like the Frederick's watercolor canvas. It's a personal preference. I don't like painting on ampersand watercolor board either. I think I just really like the way paper and watercolor reacts. But I encourage you to try it because it might be right up your alley. Just because I personally don't care for something doesn't mean that it's bad or wrong or anything. I'm just doing a light wash of sap green on its own over these little areas here. And any place I have a weird hard edge, I'm just scrubbing and softening it. And we'll go down here and do the same thing with those grasses. And so we're working on dry paper here now because I don't want these edges to smudge. And it works out pretty well when you're working outside because the air, especially in the summer, usually dries your stuff really quick.
It's actually not that humid out today here in Maine.
Oh, so humid last week.
Oh, it was like just walking around in a sponge.
I know nothing would dry my painting. Like I had that birch tree, I had to keep going away and coming back because it was so humid.
Zach Penn, have you ever used Senlier watercolors?
Nope.
I just bought a set and I'm excited to try them.
Oh, let me know what you think. They are on my wish list. I have them in my cart. But I'm like, I don't need any more watercolors, but I want those. But I've been going back and forth, the angel and devil on my shoulder.
No, you shouldn't do it. You have so many colors, but they're so beautiful. I want to try them.
And people are asking.
People need to know the Frugal Crafter needs to do a review.
Yeah, they're for an artist quality paint, they're like half the price of like Schminke, which is another, very comparable brand. So I mean, there's some places you can find them pretty darn affordably. So I don't know. I'm on the fence. I want to try them. Haven't bit the bullet yet because after my birthday spending spree, where all the watercolors came in that I reviewed, thinking I really need to cool my jets a little bit. think I'm already Owen's favorite from the Owen's Art channel. He does lots of reviews. Little ferns there. My little ferns look like tiny little pine trees. I'm gonna have to go back in there probably do a little something.
All right, let's see. People are saying the sound. Okay, I'm kind of caught up a little bit. They're saying the sound's bad. So is the sound still good or is it bad? Because I was behind.
Oh, and I might have been mumbling. It looks like I have good sound levels here. Okay. I was probably mumbling. If you guys could hop into the chat and let us know how it's sounding right now, that would be
I'm all caught up, so I'm current.
Super help. Sorry about that, guys.
Like, it doesn't sound. Okay, they're saying it's fine now. All right.
Oh, good.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. I just get behind and I don't always get alerted.
And I was mumbling.
It's been a long day already.
I know, and my day has just started. I gotta go teach a class and things going on.
All right,
today.
now I'm gonna get all caught up back to where I was. Oh, apparently there was a camera problem too. Whoops, sorry people. It's just been a technically difficult day today.
Yep. The replay should be better. Usually like any sort of like problems get compressed when they go into when YouTube kind of does its magic. I want to do some glazing here now. So we've got some rocks that'll be in the water. So what I want to do for any of these rocks, so they don't look like they're floating, I'm going to extend the colors down, and I want to do that with not a really juicy brush. So I'm going to use the burnt sienna and ultramarine, and I'm just going to kind of give it like a little bit more weight under here, so it doesn't look like they're sitting in the water yet, but it's going to be a little more realistic as we layer on more colors. And we don't want a lot of water in this. We want this fairly dry so that it looks more realistic, and then we can go in and add more pen to it over top later, which is a kind of cool thing about pen and ink. And the other thing that I wanted to encourage you to try, if you ever have a painting that is just, you finish it and it's missing, so really put your finger on what's wrong with it. A lot of times, I would say 9 times out of 10, you've got a problem with your contrast. And sometimes just going in with a black pen and outlining areas and accenting is all you need, because then you get that look of a pen and ink wash. A lot of times when artists work in pen and ink wash, they're not really doing that much shading. They're doing a lot of filling in, and it still looks really pretty. So anytime you're stuck with a painting and you just can't figure out what the deal is, why it's not working, try going in with a pen and adding more, just adding some details that way. A lot of times it's what you need. And I want to add some more depth behind the rocks, and that will give that a chance to dry before I go into my glazing. So again, mixing that same dark, a little heavier on the brown. And I'm going to go in here and just add some bits of darker dirt.
Joey, don't eat the mini clothespin.
Oh, gosh.
There's a mini clothespin on the floor. She was looking like she might want to eat. Oh, thanks.
There, mini clothespin. See, we don't make this stuff up.
Nope. Nikki Wilson, have you ever started painting and got halfway through and got frustrated with how it turned out?
Oh yeah, I think everybody has. Glass bottles.
Glass bottles. That was one I just stopped. It was like, I'm done. I'm gonna watch everybody else.
And that's okay. That's okay. It's like a book. You know, you read a book, you get halfway through, it's just the book is awful. I will abandon a book. I will abandon a painting.
There's some books that are just not worth it.
Yeah.
Kimmy Smith, if you use a pen for your sketch, does that make it multimedia, or can I still call it a watercolor?
Well, I think it's probably pretty obvious if you're using a pen in there. So I think if you can call it watercolor, and you're not deceiving anybody because people will see the pen. Or you could call it multimedia. It's completely up to you on that. As long as you're not trying to deceive somebody and get into a traditional watercolor show under false pretenses, I think you can call it a watercolor. I usually call them watercolor sketch or pen and ink and watercolor. And see, already just by adding that little bit of texture with a darker color, it adds a little bit more life to it, makes it look a little more realistic.
Gail Gasson, have you painted your children's portrait?
No, I have not, actually.
Sharon Avalos, Lindsay, just wanted to say thanks for the watercolor pencil review video. Couldn't decide between brands for a bit. Sorry. Saw your review of ones I was considering and felt confident ordering ink tints now.
Oh, you're going to love those. They're really nice. I'm so glad it helped. I did a blog post the other day about why I do reviews because there have been some complainers about.
Oh, there's always complainers.
Yeah, a lot more than usual, it seems like, these days.
It's because it's summer. People are hot and irritable. So to take it out and make themselves feel better, they get all crabby.
I think so.
That's my guess.
I'm using Viridian, and I'm also using some ultramarine blue, but I'm putting them separately so I can kind of vary, go back and forth, and dip into one, then dip in the other. And I'm using the big brush again because I like how much color I can carry on it.
M. Malin 2010. Hi, Lindsay. First time watching you live. Have you ever painted using the Bob Ross method?
Oh, when I was a child, I did because he was on TV, and I would follow along. Usually I'd use acrylics because that's what I had when I was little. Or sometimes I'd even follow along with watercolors, which is completely a different, the Bob Ross technique is completely different, but I think it's a great way to learn, for people to learn how to paint, especially if they're timid, because you do get it's process and product. You definitely know what you're getting for a product when you're done, but you get the process of having an enjoyable, painting time while you're doing it. Same thing with like the Sushiwi method. I think if you're a watercolor and you're looking for a very similar style, consider checking out what Sushiwi does. She has DVDs for sale. I don't know if you'd be able to find any of her stuff on YouTube, but if you get that Create channel from PBS, they do play some of her programs, and you could probably go on the online and get a guide of when it's on TV. That's one of those free channels that we get up here. Actually, it's a public television channel. I'm also using that Viridian and green because I think it makes a really nice kind of shadow color within the foliage here.
Kim Ryan, will you still do a tutorial on the tree from the ground perspective that you did on vacation?
Yes, I've already filmed it. It needs to be uploaded. I was actually trying to upload it before I started live streaming this morning, and yeah, it was just. I was thinking I could sneak that in before we go. I couldn't even get the live stream on the air, let alone any sort of additional multitasking. All right, and let's work on our little tree there. I want to do a wash, kind of like a grayed down wash on there. And since that's really heavy on red, I'm going to do ultramarine blue, and I'm going to take, because that's red, green is the opposite. I'm going to grab some of the Viridianish green there. So I want kind of like a cool gray green just to wash over there. I need a little more blue in there, I think. Just to cool that down.
Gracie Shack, what art book would you recommend for drawing?
For adults, I recommend Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. For kids, I think kids should just draw. Yellow ochre, you can add some warmth to some of your rocks that feel like they are a little too cool. You can also do that with the burnt sienna. Add a little texture. And I want to do some darker shadows on the bottom of the rocks. And again, we're using our trusty burnt sienna and ultramarine mix. Something I recommend, if you start off with a palette like this with student grade colors, as you use them up, buy a tube of the artist grade colors. It won't be so expensive. So if like you use up your burnt sienna, a tube of artist grade burnt sienna isn't a crazy expensive thing because it's a fairly inexpensive pigment, but it's very useful. So by refilling it with an artist grade pigment, you're going to, as your skills improve, you're going to be working with nicer paints and you'll really be able to tell the difference. I think when you're starting off, it can be difficult to see those differences in your paint. So if you replace them one at a time, you're going to only buy the colors you really need, and you're going to, I just think you're going to, it's almost like you've won a prize. You've gotten a better quality of paint because you've earned it, and you'll really notice a difference, and it won't be too expensive if you do it that way.
Cynthia Smart, why is it bad to use the white?
Well, the white watercolor gets its beauty from the color coming down through the transparent layers of your color, of your paint, bouncing off the white of the paper and coming back and reflecting through the color. So you kind of get that color two ways. You get it as the light passes down through it and as it passes through it. So it's extremely vibrant that way. When you add white to your color, your paints become opaque, and they lose that, you lose that luminosity of the light being able to pass through them. So I wouldn't say it's bad, it's just that's the effect that you're going to get when you add white. But in fact, if you added white or used a color with a white mix in it, such as Naples yellow or titanium buff, it's very effective for painting heavy objects that are opaque, such as like sand on a beach scene, or you know, something like that, where you wouldn't necessarily want that gleaming color. So just know why it does what it does and use it if you choose to use it in a way that's going to benefit your art. I don't think that it's just not traditional, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. And if my painting is ready for the trash can and using a little white is going to keep it from the trash can, I'll use the white. So even though I usually start every painting with the goal of keeping a transparent watercolor, things don't always work out that way.
Kimmy Smith, can you recommend any watercolor books?
Yes, and it's out of print, but you can probably find it. It's by Marian Appeloff. It's everything you ever wanted to know about watercolor, and it is truly, like, the name is true. It's a fantastic book.
Jashnur Dariwal, have you ever done a piece with Copic markers?
I've colored stamped images with Copic, but I don't paint with them because they're not light fast, and I don't want to create something that I fall in love with and then realize I can't hang it. All right, so I'm going to hit this with a heat tool again. So if you have any more questions, fire them away, but we are almost done.
Lynn McLean, hi Lindsay, do you do tonal thumbnail sketches before choosing what to paint? What do you look for when painting outside? Thank you so much for all your help and inspiration.
I do sometimes. I'm much more inclined to do a quick sketch, but then or I'll actually even do a detailed sketch, and then I'll transfer it using transfer paper onto my watercolor surface, but I'll do a color sketch. I'll pick out, because I like to only use about 5 colors in a painting, so I'll work out my colors and make sure they're going to mix the range of colors I want before I begin. I sketch pretty quickly, so I'm probably even more likely just to sketch it the size that I need it. But yeah, it's a great habit. I think I want to use this brush. This is what happens when you store your brushes on their tip by accident, or you put them away on their tip, they get this bend to them. So don't do that. It's very problematic to paint with. Before I go in with this paint, I want to add some lines here at the bottom of these rocks. And I'm doing a broken line. See that? It's not a solid line. My throat is so froggy today. I'm just kind of putting in the suggestion of the bottom of these rocks, but very, very sketchy. What's that face over there?
No, my contacts are a little dry.
Well, don't tell me we have a troll. I'll be surprised if a troll could find us today.
No. It's just, if I wear them and stare at a computer screen, I forget to blink sometimes, especially if I'm trying to keep up with the questions. So they just got a little dry, but that's why I'm making them blinking.
Oh, okay.
Trying to moisten them with my own tears.
Oh.
Zach Penn, Lindsay, often when I glaze a painting, the underlying color will lift off. Is this normal?
It will happen if you have a brush that's too rough, that's too stiff, like if you're using a brush like this to glaze, it's going to pick up the paint underneath. You want a soft brush, ideally like a faux synthetic, like a faux squirrel brush, something with really soft bristles like that, so it won't abrade your paint underneath and lift it. And then student quality paints are more likely to lift, like the Cotmans lift very well, which can be a benefit or a negative depending on what you're trying to paint. And you could just be choosing really, like for your underpainting, you could be using colors that are just very liftable, like ultramarine blue is an extremely liftable color. So is yellow ochre and burnt sienna. So you may choose to do your underpainting with colors that are less likely to lift, or if you want to be really crazy, you could use some ink tints for your underpainting and none of those will lift. That's a water-soluble ink made by Derwent.
Are they considered watercolor?
They're really not considered. Yeah, they're not.
Stephen Theron just asked if they're considered to be watercolor.
Not really. They're they're a water-soluble media, but they wouldn't be a traditional watercolor. So that's another consideration. Or just choose colors that are very staining, like your phthalocyan colors, your You know, the super vibrant colors. If you like look at a color chart, there usually be information about the paints, and it will say like a Y or an N, and that's for staining or not staining. Yes, it stains, or no, it doesn't, I believe, or maybe yes, it granulates. I think it's yes, it stains. But you can, every thing would have its own little key. Every chart would have its own little key and explain what the codes mean. Daniel Smith is a really good one. But you could do that and then decide to do your underpainting with colors that will not lift. So when you glaze over, they won't come up on you. So there's many things it could be. Could be the paint, could be the paper, could be the like a paper like Yupo, a synthetic paper. Anything's going to lift off that. Whether it might stain a little bit, but it will come up. And a paper like Arches might be. You can usually scrub it up, but it's going to absorb better, so you can glaze over it. And a paper like Canson Montville is very heavily sized wood pulp, and it's going to release its paint really easily. So there's so many different variables. But do a soft brush. Make sure your underpainting is a staining color, and you should be all right. All right. You can tweak this painting a little bit more if you want to, but I think that we can really just call this a day. If you want to cool things down and make them push back, you can use a light wash that's like a cool gray, like a gray that has more blue in it. If you want things to come forward, you can add some burnt sienna or yellow ochre to them and they'll come forward. If you got something too dark and you want to lighten it, here's what you do. Like on the tops of some of these rocks, if I want to have it be a little bit brighter, I just scrub a little bit with an old brush, an old stiffer brush, and I can blot it and add my highlights that way. It gives us a really nice subtle highlight, and it'll be kind of soft too. If you wanted to do rocks that are really harsh, I do have a seascape tutorial. That was one of our live streams that goes into painting those, and it shows you how to get the more sheared off rocks. But something I've done for really harsh rocks is just torn up masking tape and stuck it down, painted around it, and then when I lifted it up, I just had those really harsh lines that just ended up looking rocky just because of the shape the tape left behind. But that's it for today. I hope you guys found it useful. Do we have any last minute questions before we go?
I think we're all caught up. Benny Chavez loves your blocking. He loves your watercolor block making method.
Oh, thank you.
He ended up blocking all of his watercolor pads.
Yay! Oh, it's so much more convenient. And I think it saves a lot of money when you think about rolls of tape or buying watercolor blocks. It's very economical. I'm glad it was useful.
Oh, Penny Newcomer, does Lindsay keep the water in her water brushes, or does she fill new every time?
I keep the water in. I just fill it when it runs out.
Okay. All right, and that's how we're caught up on questions.
Awesome. Again, I want to thank you all for your patience with this live stream today, having to find a whole new location and everything, but it all worked out in the end. And I want to thank jerrysartorama.com for sponsoring. If you are interested in this set, they do have it on their website on sale for $55. It's regular $91, but this is the Cotman Studio set, the American version. On their web, mine contained real cadmiums and cobalts, and on their site it says that theirs does. So so that's great news, because I didn't think that you could get the real cadmiums and cobalts, but I think maybe in the European market, because I just got the set of 45 half pans, and this is the set they sell in Europe. It was an import. There's no cadmium, no real cadmiums or cobalts in this. So just letting you know about that. You can always call and ask them, just in case their information's old, but that's still of a deal if those are real cadmiums on what they have on the website. And yeah, so everything I used today is linked in the video description. Thank you, Sarah, for coming over.
Anytime, every Friday, that's my plan.
And thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up and tell your friends. Thanks so much, and happy crafting.